Government came into power, we changed the strategy for the North, the Northern strategy, the Arctic strategy, to emphasize on people. We believe if there's strong, healthy people in the North, then you'll have strong sovereignty in the North, good development, good resource development, and environmental protection. So I was delighted that the budgets of 2016, 2017 reflect this emphasis on the people, and I'll just talk about some of the items that were in those budgets that made Northerners very happy. First of all, the large increase in the Northern Allowance in 2016 budget helped to cover the cost, the high cost of living in the North. Sometimes a jug of milk in the high Arctic can cost 3, 4, 5 times what it does down south. As an example, all sorts of things cost higher, so this big increase in the Northern Allowance is very welcome to help keep talented people in the North and the people that have lived there for generations to be able to afford a good lifestyle, to be able to raise their families, provide health and good clothing and food for their children, etc. To help that immensely, of course, was the child benefit. Big increase, especially for low-income families with children. You can imagine the incredible task of a single mother in the North with these high costs, trying to raise her children, and this non-taxable child benefit has gone such a long way and made such a big help in the North. The same for all categories of people, for the OAS supplement, to help the poorest of seniors, the increase in student loans or student grants for the low-income students, and doubling the student jobs for the summer. They all go to help the people, especially the people that need it the most in the North. In the North, the biggest, in my riding, in the Yukon, the two biggest private sectors are mining and tourism. Mining, of course, has been the biggest contributor to our gross domestic product since the great Klondike gold rush, greatest gold rush in the world. And so it's very important. In the recent years, exploration has been very important to our economy, mineral exploration. And so we worked hard to ensure, and it occurred, and the Minister of Natural Resources also was a very strong advocate for this, for increasing the mineral exploration tax credit, for extending it another year. This is a 15% tax credit. A lot of the mining activity in the Yukon at the moment is exploration, and a lot of it, probably a vast majority of it, would not occur without this tax credit. So this is very instrumental and a huge help to the people of the Yukon. The second biggest sector is tourism. And sometimes it's the biggest employer for the number of people in the Yukon. It's a bigger part of our gross domestic product than any other province or territory. So when there were cuts in recent years, it hurt us more than anyone else. And so we were delighted that, just to announce recently, $2 million for marketing for TV Yukon ads for tourism. Also $1 million for the First Nation Tourism Association, because a lot of people come to the North. They really want the authentic experience of First Nation tourism's products and services. Also, the Department of Indigenous Affairs in this budget, 2017, was given $8.6 million, again for Indigenous tourism activities. And the Prime Marketing Agency for Canada, Destination Canada, as you know, last year got an increase, a desperately needed increase after many years of cuts, of $37.5 million to help market Canada around the world. And we were delighted that this year that increase was made permanent in budget 2017. We have a situation in the Yukon where a curious situation where we have jobs available without people, and we have people without jobs. And the reason for that is because people need training. There are jobs available, but they're not trained up to take some of those jobs. So, excuse me. So we're very happy that budget 2017 included $14.7 million for the 3 territories for basic adult education. So wherever a person gets out of high school or college and they need more education to be able to get into the trades or their professions, this money is instrumental in the territories, and so we're delighted that has been carried on. There's also $90 million for the country for Indigenous post-secondary education to help Indigenous students in post-secondary education, and $50 million more for Assets program. Once again, it's skills development for First Nations people across Canada. Another item that's very instrumental in the North and in my riding is housing. And as an early member of the Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition for years, this has been one of our highest priorities, is affordable housing. So we're very delighted that Budget 2017 had $11.2 billion for the National Housing Strategy. And on top of that, the Yukon specifically will get $24 million just for the Yukon. Also, of course, important to the workforce, particularly getting women into the workforce, is more childcare spaces. And of course, we're very happy with the $7 billion nationally to help create more childcare spaces. Like everywhere else, we had a number of Canada 150 projects going on this year, which are very exciting, and have also announced a number of seniors projects, which were very well received. The Territorial Health Investment Fund to help us in the unique challenges of health in the North of $25.6 million in this budget, $89.9 million for Canada for Indigenous languages, which again are very important in my riding. I just made a big announcement about Indigenous youth in sport for the Aboriginal Games, and of course the extra money for mental health for Indigenous people. The Yukon government also gets a transfer from the federal government, and this is the biggest transfer in history. It's $24.9 million increase over last year. The Canada Health transfer is $0.8 million, and the Canada Social transfer $0.3 million increase from last year. We're also delighted to get the new judge that we asked for. We had only 2 Supreme Court judges. You know, if one's taken up on a big federal Supreme Court judge on a major murder case, the other one has the routine proceedings every week. There really a lot of the civil cases were getting backlogged, so we're delighted that that was in this budget. Also, of course, the increases for Parks Canada is very important in our riding, and green technologies support is very important across the country to help the transition to renewables. I was in Washington a few weeks ago with the leaders speaking at a conference of northern leaders from right across North America, Alaska, the 3 Canadian territories, and Greenland. And the 2 themes were infrastructure. Things that were needed for development were more infrastructure and more affordable energy. So we were, of course, delighted, the municipal leaders, the territorial government, for the large transfers of infrastructure. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time left to go through it all in detail, but the programs, the Trade and Transportation Corridor, $10 billion for Canada, the Building Canada Fund, all sorts of projects for water, wastewater, recreation, roads, bridges. The transit, we've already got some buses from the Transit Fund, the social infrastructure, the green infrastructure, the internet infrastructure, northern and rural infrastructure, $2 billion. I can't remember a time in history when any government has put that much emphasis on rural Canada, of coming up with a fund for rural and north of $2 billion in infrastructure, added to, because the North is also eligible for all these other infrastructure funds, and it's on a base plus basis. It's not on a per capita basis, or we get almost nothing. So we're delighted we get a base amount. There's the infrastructure bank and traditional knowledge to help First Nations, and money for First Nations to get infrastructure to protect from climate change. Very forward thinking. And the other area mentioned from the conference is energy, affordable energy for the North, and we're delighted that there's $21.4 million to get northern Indigenous communities off diesel. A lot of them are on diesel, and $400 million for an Arctic Energy Fund. So all these items are great for the economy of the North, the environment of the North, and most important for the people of the North, because when you have a strong, healthy, engaged people that believe and have their culture supported, then you're going to have a strong northern part of Canada, which will be important for all of us. Thank you. Merci, Masicho, Gunas Cheese.